Christmas came early for web developers everywhere as Apple and Microsoft both ship early preview versions of their browsers supporting service workers. What does this mean, and what can you expect? Hey guys, Chris Love, the owner of Love to Dev, and this is a big week. Christmas is right around the corner, and Apple and Microsoft have shipped gifts for developers everywhere by adding service worker support by default in both Safari and Microsoft Edge. This is huge news because these are the last two primary browsers without service worker support. Now, as we've talked about earlier, Microsoft did ship Microsoft Edge with service workers back in September in the Fall Creators Insiders builds. However, you have to enable that by going to the About flags. Today, however, that's changed for insiders. The Insider edition of Microsoft Windows ships with a version of Microsoft Edge that has service workers turned on by default. Service worker support in Microsoft Edge supports all the caching functionality as well as native push notifications. I haven't got clarification yet if background sync is supported, but I'll verify that as soon as I possibly can and let you know. Now, Microsoft has been public about their enthusiasm behind progressive web applications, and this is the last piece of the puzzle. They have supported progressive web apps. Also, in an earlier form, they called it hosted web apps, and they've been very enthusiastic about it since Windows 10 released several years ago. So now we're going to have full platform functionality for progressive web apps in Microsoft Edge on Windows. But not to be outdone, the very next day, Apple publicly announced that the latest version of the Safari Technology Preview has service workers turned on by default. Now you can download the Safari Technology Preview if you're on Mac OS and try it out yourself. Personally, I don't have Mac, so I can't try this out and I can't give you any direct feedback. I need to check to see if this is available on something like Browser Stack so I can see what's going on. Now, this is very exciting to see the momentum that Apple is pursuing with service workers and progressive web applications. We first heard that Apple was going to start implementing service workers back in August. But because Apple and the Safari team are very tight-lipped about what they're working on, we haven't been quite sure what the status is, but this is a very clear indication that they're pushing very hard and fast to deliver service workers for mass support. Now, I don't know when they'll ship, and no one else outside of their team really knows when they plan on shipping, but my guess is probably next fall because that's when they do their major updates. Hopefully it'll be before then, but who knows? Stay tuned and I'll be one of the first ones to tell you about it shipping to the masses. And hopefully it's going to be available on iPhone and iPads sooner rather than later. Now this dovetails with some other activity going on in Cupertino. Just a few weeks ago, Apple also announced on the WebKit status page that they're working on implementing the Web Manifest Specification. This is a clear indication that Apple has finally decided to adopt progressive web applications. Again, they're not very public in talking about what they're doing, but these are very clear signals that progressive web applications are coming to iOS and Mac OS. And to round that up, if you've been following me this week, I also reported that the Apple App Store is becoming very aggressive in rejecting applications that they feel should be websites or web applications instead. And they're also removing hundreds of thousands of apps from the Apple App Store that they feel like should not be apps, but rather should be websites. And I clearly see that Apple, with these actions, is starting to drive businesses and marketers and anybody who's trying to gain access to consumers and customers or line of business applications, pushing them towards a progressive web application solution. And one of the things I talked about in that video is the Apple App Store actually is very expensive for them to maintain. Now they make, I think, $3.5 billion a year in revenue, but the margins are not very good compared to their hardware sales. So it's in their best interest to become more profitable by removing that overhead. And if you really break it down, most activity still happens on the web unless you're on Facebook or, looking up something on Google Maps or in Gmail, evidently. Now, if you haven't started working on service workers, right now is the time you need to start working on service workers. You need to start learning how to develop and ship great progressive web apps that use service workers, service worker caching, and can implement things like push notifications. Now, it may sound very simple at first, but there's a lot of details that you need to know. And I've got a solution for you. My course, Progressive Web Application from Beginner to Expert, will guide you from starting at nothing and covering almost everything you could possibly think about needing to know when it relates to progressive web applications and service workers. This will make you the developer that businesses want to have to help them ship the great progressive web app, to engage with their customers and increase their bottom line. So be the hero that your customers and clients and stakeholders want, and learn to master progressive web applications. Microsoft and Apple are both behind this. Google is obviously behind it. Samsung has shipped support, Opera has shipped support, and Firefox has shipped support for progressive web applications. This is clearly the future of the web, and actually I would say it's the web today. Not only are the browsers behind it, but marketing, search engine optimization experts are behind progressive web apps. This is a golden opportunity for you as a web developer or as a business owner to upgrade your skills and your online presence.